love. I know I ain't got too much of it, but I can't be your one-night lover. Be your one-time lover.
I'm sitting here and I'm listening to Jonathan just spill out his heart about Asia and DeMarcus and what he's been through. And I stop and I open my phone and I send a text to Asia telling her to call me as soon as possible. Well, he's explaining why he thinks that DeMarcus is his, and he continues with this story, telling me that Mark was in the limo and that Asia was at Demitry's house and that he, Jonathan, was in the hospital while all of this was going on. He's in the hospital for a panic attack. This is really getting to be more than I can handle. Nevertheless, the studio time was booked. Jonathan was there and having a breakdown, as it were. So I kept listening to this crazy story. Mark not wanting to lose face. Doesn't say anything to Chief, right? He doesn't say that he lost his phone. He doesn't say that he left it in the rain. Mark's dumb-tailed basically says, I'll call her in the morning. That's what Jonathan says. Even though Mark had been at, the cell phone girl's place earlier, rumor had it that they had been messing around. Chief looked frustrated. He flicked the blunt out the window. Captain says, Mark, you got to quit turning off your phone, man. You got to quit turning off your phone. I've been trying to reach you. Mark, if it hadn't been for Demitry, I, in my mind, just threw my hands up. This guy's coming telling me about my wife when somebody in his motorcycle club is calling his main girl to get information on him. How reliable can this guy be? Had another drink. I kept listening. Chief says, you would have missed this great business opportunity. Captain put the car in gear and they pull off from in front of the hospital. Chief is in the back of the car taking drinks and smoking. And he says to Mark, how long have you been in Team 901 anyway? Mark pauses. Says, since I was knee high to a grasshopper, big brother. 901. Yeah, the motorcycle club. Anyway, back at Demitry's house. Mama? A call comes from the back of the house.
I hear the baby calling me,
Asia says as she's looking down at Demitry, whose face is buried inside of her wet thighs, touching and kissing. All of this is happening, Jonathan's telling me, as he's in the hospital for a panic attack because he saw these two together. Asia and Demitry begin to recompose themselves, fearing that the child will be coming down the hallway any second.
Yes, DeMarcus, Mama's in here. Did you take a nap?
Wiping sweat from her forehead, Demitry smiles at Asia, who is now picking up her panties and her Bluetooth earpiece off the floor.
Bitch, you know you love how I made you feel.
Demitry told Jonathan that she said this under her breath. Asia pretends not to hear her comment and hugs DeMarcus. Okay, Mama? That's what DeMarcus says, looking at his mother's scattered disposition. Asia, continuing to hug DeMarcus, looks at Demitry while Demitry extends her tongue, licking her lips. Asia thinks,
I could cut this heifer. If she didn't know about DeMarcus's daddy, at first it was the threesome. Now I have to be her sex slave.
Right there, I knew. I knew that, there was some truth to what Jonathan was telling me because I have specifically heard Asia say these words about Demitry. Had to keep my composure, though. Jonathan says Asia was feeling used by Demitry right then and said to DeMarcus.
Get your coat, DeMarcus. It's time to go.
Meanwhile, in the black Lexus, Chief, Captain, and Mark pull up across town at a restaurant operated by a rival bike gang. Well, this rival bike gang is called the Coke Boys, Koke. Have a Coke and a smile, that deal. Well, anyway, there was a man turning the sign in the window to closed. Captain says, "We're right on time, Chief." Chief looks at Mark out of the corner of his eye and says, "Are you a shaky nigga? Are you a shaky nigga?" Mark, turning quickly, says, I ain't shaky, man. I ain't shaky. I don't even know why you would ask me that. I don't even know why you would ask me that, man. I don't even know why you would ask me that, Captain." Captain holds up a machine gun. Yeah, a machine gun. And hands it back to Mark. That's what Mark had told Jonathan. Mark grabbed the gun and released the safety. He just wanted to show them how ready he was. Captain says, "One man with one pistol trying to wage a war. Are you sure you can handle this situation for Team 901? Mark nods his head. Captain says, "If you handle this situation, we'll do business with your cell phone, bitch." The doors unlock. Chief leans back up against his door and starts crumbling some more herb. Captain says, "Either you a bad motherfucker or you not." Mark looks at the gun and shuts the door. In my mind, I'm beginning to reminisce. I remember Asia telling me about Mark going to this rival bike gang deal. I remember that in my head. So I look at Jonathan and I pick back up my gun. Jonathan says, "Well, just let me finish telling you my story." "Hello, doctor? When can I get out of here?" That's what Jonathan says. "As soon as you can get someone to drive you home. You'll have a couple of medicines, and I'm sending home with you a little chart to measure your anxiety. Anxiety is a strange beast, and your weight is another factor, Jay." The doctor says this to him as he's signing his chart. "You have to keep your stress down and change your diet. Now, who are we calling to pick you up?" Jay pauses for a second and asks the nurse, "Is Mark still here?" The nurse responds,
"I saw the guy who unhooked your restraints getting in a black Lexus out front. Is there anyone else?"
Jay was just outdone then. First Mark comes and relieves the strains that have been holding him down. He gets him untied from the bed, but now, how can he expect him to stick around? He frowns a little bit. They pull the IV off his arm, and Jay knows in his heart he wants to call his girl Demitry, but after what he saw, it was cool when he and Demitry and Asia were just kicking it, It was cool when they was, just hanging out. It was cool when he felt he was in control, but then Asia had the baby, and he knew that Demitry would do anything for him. That's what he told me. And, I had to believe that, from what I've seen of Demitry and Jay, that they could have a good relationship. So I could understand, like he told me, why he had them call Demitry to come pick him up. But see, Demitry, man, Demitry is a scandalous bitch. Across town, standing outside in the rain, Mark eyes the Coke Boys restaurant. He can feel his heart beating, but he knows what he has to do. Chief yells out the window as he's driving away, "Don't tempt me, nigga. Don't tempt me." Mark's nodding his head and focusing on what he has to do. He stands in the shadows across the street with the gun under his trench coat, just trying to avoid the rain. Asia's are trying to, shall we say, avoid the rain as well. She pulls into the garage, over at her house, and that's when she gets a text from Demitry saying, Jay is getting out. Jay is getting released. Asia lets out a sigh of relief. I start to think. I just text Asia and she hasn't texted me back yet. Man, it's times like this it makes me wonder. But I keep my composure. And I start to think about what I'm going to do with this situation with Jonathan. I ask him, does he want a drink? He nods his head yes. I set him a glass on the table and pour him a drink of Cavassier. Tell me the rest of the story, man. I want to hear what you got to say. Demitry is on her way to the hospital to pick him up. Asia's taking DeMarcus out of the car in the garage, and Mark is standing in the rain eyeing the Coke Boys restaurant. Chief and Captain are riding up the street lighting a blunt as Chief looks at a naked picture of Asia that Asia texts to him. Captain, Chief says, do you really think Mark can handle that fat ass of Asia's? Captain looks in the rearview mirror and says, if Mark don't come back, I'll pop that donkey. And then they both start laughing. This story was getting better to me than The Young and the Restless by this point. I just really wanted to see what was going to happen. I really didn't. By this point, I had decided that I was definitely going to whoop Jonathan. In my mind, I had decided that as soon as he finished his story, I was going to take my hand and just start pistol whooping this cat. Wasn't going to settle for no more of this mess coming to my studio. But I sat back and said, man, finish your story. So Jonathan tells me that Mark knows that this is the chance that Asia's been telling him about. There he goes again with Asia. It seems like everything that's happening here, he's blaming on Asia. But I sit back and I listen. Asia's been telling Mark that if he sticks with it, can get some real good money and provide for their son, DeMarcus. I start to grit my teeth. That's when Mark put on the ski mask and began to walk across the street. I remember the day like it was yesterday. I'm coming out of the studio and I hear it come across the radio.
There's been a 3-alarm shooting. 3-alarm shooting. 3-alarm shooting at the Coke Boys restaurant.
When I heard it, I was like, man, what happened?
3-alarm shooting. 3-alarm shooting. 2 officers down.
They were rushing by me left and right. I remember the day like it was yesterday. And coming to find out, Mark is the one that was behind the officers getting shot. Mark was the one who was behind all those people got killed over there. Man. I didn't know that dude was that hard. I look back at Jonathan and say, man, finish your story, bruh.